Good afternoon, everyone. Great to meet you all today virtually. My name is Venkat. I have been in the space of data and analytics for the last couple of decades. And currently, I'm the global leader for analytics at Tesco Business Services. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a phrase which is revered in the world of data and analytics: data-driven organizations. When I was in consulting a few years ago, I used to love this phrase because it used to create a sense of excitement and hope that data and analytics could define better future for organizations. But what does it really mean? Is it just a sales term or is there something more to it? I will share my reflections on these questions with you in the next 20 odd minutes. I have structured my talk in three parts. First is a reality check of where is the concept on ground in the industries today? How much has it evolved? And why there is so much more work for you and I to do. Second is to give this concept a tangible form. What would a data-driven organization look like? What are the principles? What are the enablers? And what outcomes are at stake if you could get this right? So second section is all about the what. Third is all about the how. How could we build such organizations? And through this, I'll share a simple framework that I have learned in my journey, which could help you gauge the progress in the journey of becoming more data-driven. So let's get in. Before we get started, I would like to clarify that my talk today includes, but is not limited to, learnings from Tesco. It is rather a synthesis of various experiences that I've had in the pursuit of building data-driven organizations. Without much ado, let's get in. Firstly, let's look at some numbers to understand the state of the union. Since 2012, an independent organization called New Vantage Partners has been consulting annual executive survey on the state of big data and AI. This is a very well-regarded executive survey that comprises exclusively of the top Fortune organizations. If you look at what the survey has been saying for the last 3 years, it's rather a very surprising and counterintuitive story. It says across three very important dimensions of forging data culture, creating data-driven organizations, and competing on analytics, the success rate has been falling over the last 3 years. The latest report in 2021 goes on to mention that the root cause for this decline is not investment, it's not technology, it's not even skills and capability. Rather, it's the culture or the pull from humans in the organizations to make this change happen. But there is hope. What experts feel is that this is the time the hype cycle of data-driven organizations, where the hubris of the concept is settling in to a realistic and tangible goal. So that way, it is good that reality is settling in and we can now focus on a realistic future ahead. So after a decade of talking about the concept of data-driven organizations, the bottom line is there is still a lot of work for us to do. After looking at not so great numbers in the previous slide, it's time to up the mood a little bit. It's time to look for some inspiration on what is truly possible when you get things right. Given this title of the talk is Data-Driven Organizations, what better place to take inspiration than from Formula One, where data truly drives the teams forward. And if you don't trust me when I say data truly drives the teams forward in Formula One, please watch this upcoming video for the next 3 minutes, and then we'll pick it up again.
Well, Mark, here we are again. Today we're looking at how teams extract and source every bit of data possible to get that head start over their rivals.
Yeah, it's a really big area for Formula One teams as part of maximising their own performance. So they use this data because it's something that gives them a bit of a hidden insight, if you like, to opportunities that they may not be able to see just with the naked eye.
So I can see our car's been stripped back. Is this because this is where they're collecting the data from?
Yeah, well, it's collected from literally everywhere around the car, but without the bodywork on, we just get a little glimpse, perhaps, of a lot of the wiring, the sensors and the connectors that are buried underneath. You know, they are everywhere around this car, 150 or so sensors, perhaps, and kilometres worth of wiring, maybe linking the whole thing together.
So they source a lot of their data from the car. What about the driver?
Yeah, so the driver now is another part of it. He's now monitored, he's sensored up, if you like. So he's wearing heart rate monitors, temperature sensors. And actually this year in 2014, tiny little G-force sensors inside their ears, which let the FIA medical crews know that if there's an impact or a big hit in a car over a curb, or if they crash, involved in an accident, the impact on the driver's skull and therefore his brain can be carefully monitored, and they're using that research data to prevent and minimise injuries that further down the line accordingly.
So we know this is where the data is being sourced from. Where's it then going?
Well, of course, as the car's going around the track, all of this data being collected through the engine, the data management system is being sent straight back to the garage in the pits. Those guys are analysing it. But on top of that, which a lot of people won't know, is that data is also being simultaneously sent back to the factory. Now that could be on the other side of the world. If these guys are racing in Australia and the base is back in the UK, that data is travelling right around the planet in split seconds for another team of people back there to be analysing it in even more detail and helping the team at the track.
So basically, when we watch a team decide to make a pit stop, that decision could have been made in a different country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the strategy side of things is as much a part of this as the performance side within terms of the car. So yes, they have access to so much information that it might be their call to make a pit stop over and above the driver or the team.
We sometimes see those egos coming through with the drivers, don't we?
They don't always agree with
Yeah.
it, but yes, they don't always have the bigger picture.
So when we're watching the race, we don't see or know of any of that data. Is that because it's top secret and quite guarded?
Yes, is the short answer. That's a big part of it, but also the sheer volume of data means that we could never really see all of that on TV. But yes, it's closely guarded because this is the sort of thing that enables a team to set themselves aside from another team in the pit lane. All the teams are collecting very similar data, very similar amounts of data, but it's how they use it and what they use it for that sets them aside from everybody else. So it's a real closely guarded secret within the paddock.
Now, I hope you understand and agree with me that data is really driving Formula One. Whenever I am in doubt about building data-driven organizations, this is my go-to video. And I think it is justified for me to say that a good Formula One team is a perfect example of a truly data-driven organization. I say this because they have clear principles around building a data proposition. First, the amount of focus they have in harvesting usable data. 200 to 300 sensors, kilometers worth of wiring running around the car and the driver, transmitting 300 to 400 gigabytes of data real time every Grand Prix weekend. That's a lot of data, but that's the edge. Second, they have overcome the mental block of where the talent sits. It really can sit anywhere in the globe, and Formula One teams have created the right enablement of technology and tools to help this talent analyze and influence actions in real time. Third, how much decision rights are we going to give the data team? This is really a cultural question. In Formula One, the team which is sitting in a completely different part of the globe has the rights to ask the driver to take a pit stop at a particular point in time, which is really a very crucial strategy in a race. Are we creating the same level of empowerment for the data and analytical teams in our organizations? Fourth is the realization that application is the real secret. It's not about how much data you gather, it's about what do you use it for and how well do you use it. And this might sound very simple, but this is a very powerful realization. And with these four, what Formula One teams are really able to do is collectively drive tangible outcomes. Outcomes in terms of engineering their cars better, outcomes in terms of achieving greater speed, outcomes in terms of getting real-time edge over competition, collectively helping them get a podium finish. Now that's why I think a Formula One team is a great example of a truly data-driven organization. So if we zoom out, the key takeaway from the Formula One story is a real simple logical framework to become more data driven. First is the focus on building the right enablers in the ecosystem. Sharp focus on data harvesting, solid capability strategy, real decision rights for the data team, and a realization that the secret is application and not collection and storage of data. If you could build these right ecosystem enablers, what's at stake is the ability to impact the business across core areas of strategy. Strategy of how the business should be built, how the business should be grown, how should we compete in the market. Performance. Performance of what's happening to our business right now in terms of customers, finance, operations, supply chain. And third is the ability to see the bigger picture near real time through data and analytics and drive real agile and competitive decisions. But the most important underpin to this change is how good are we culturally geared to make this change happen. Now, this change must happen through us and around us. So we have a role to play. Just imagine the owners of $1 billion sports franchise trust the data team sitting thousands of miles away for seeing the bigger picture of the race and driving the team towards a podium finish. That's true data-driven culture for you. That's the possibility, but next, the rubber has got to hit the road, and let's see how we can make that happen. So now we know what a truly data-driven organization could be and the principles to making it come alive. Over the next 15 minutes, we will try to focus on the how, which is the most important aspect of building data-driven organizations. I fundamentally believe that data-driven organizations are built one meeting at a time. The real moment of truth where the organization can go up, stay where they are, or go down in their data-driven pursuit is really the meetings or the forums where there are decisions being taken. Let's simulate this a little bit. A very familiar situation. There is a strategic review coming up next week with you and a few more organizational leaders. The question that I have for you is, how will you infuse data-driven thinking in the preparation for this meeting, during the meeting, and post-meeting in terms of driving the outcomes? This is important because doing this once, doing this a few times, and doing this most times could make the difference between a company trying to be data-driven versus one which is data-driven. And this is what I call building the culture of data. Let's take this forward with a real example. A true Tesco story. As you might know, Tesco Group has multiple fully owned and joint venture entities. And the fact is that not all of them are at the same level of data and analytics maturity. The objective of my team is to constantly try and evolve all of them to higher orders of data analytics maturity. Case in point is one of the entities that is relatively less mature but has aggressive growth plans. Therefore, the readiness of data and analytics is not very high, but the need for it is very high given the growth plans. One of the growth levers is a new concept store. A concept store is a new design, a new layout, a new product range and pricing, and something which is going to look very different when a customer comes in to this particular store format. And this store format is getting piloted across 5 locations. And on a monthly basis, the CEO and all of his direct reports have the reviews to look at the performance and take decisions on whether we should continue the path, pivot the path, or do something radically different to scale this concept. Firstly, the starting position. The CEO and his direct reports used to review the concept store second week of every month. Why second week of every month? Because the first week was spent by 6 colleagues in preparing the Excels and PPTs required for the review. Why so much time? Because data was organized functionally across customer, finance, supply chain, product. and they were maintained in different data sources, which means the level in which the data was stored, the format in which the data was stored, and the complexity of accessing the data, all of that led to a situation where you needed 6 colleagues working for a week to prepare for the review. Fast forward by 4 months, a completely transformed picture. Firstly, the executives no longer just have lagging indicators or historical indicators of what's happening to the concept store, but there is more predictive analytics and machine learning, which gives futuristic view into what's the likely forecast sales, what's the likely profitability, what's the likely customer footfall rate, and what's the likely category growth rate. So in a sense, you don't just have historical view of what happened, but you also have a fairly realistic view of what's likely to happen. All these insights of history and likely future is packaged into a self-service tool, which is accessible by the execs over the web anytime they want. So they don't have to depend on the Excels and PPTs anymore. And holistic insights of past, present, and future in a self-service tool meant that the review meeting is not even a review meeting anymore. Because the review happens whenever the execs have time. They could do it early in the morning, they could do it just before the meeting, or they could do it the previous night. And because of this, what used to be a review meeting to figure out what's happening has now become a decision meeting. And this forum happens now on a weekly basis, not a monthly basis. And data is ready on a Monday as of the previous Sunday, which means there's more real-time action possibility. But the steps to get there are very important. First, we had to invest in the right data systems to increase the review frequency from monthly to weekly, and the systems should support it, which needed some capex investment. Data had to be created as a cross-functional centralized data lake, as opposed to having functional and spread across systems, which created a lot of complexity. Third is the accessibility to the numbers is now through a self-service tool. You don't have to depend on translators or teams of people to work on the data. It's on a tool and it's accessible anytime by the executives. Fourth, now the team that supports the execs is not the same team that pulls data from different systems in the starting position. The team that is helping the execs is a problem-solving team. It's helping them improve the self-service tool more and more. They're infusing more science into it. They're improving the visualization behind the tool. They're improving the machine learning behind the forecasting. So the talent has now moved from data jockeys to real problem solvers. And fifth is the CEO alignment. Before we started all of this, we first had to establish the case for it. And we had to get the alignment of CEO and all his direct reports through multiple workshops to ensure that we agitate them, we get their alignment, we get the investments, and we go through these 5 steps before we could reach the current state. That was a live example from Tesco, and I hope you appreciated it. But if we zoom out, it is easy to abstract the journey into a few steps. And in my view, these few steps done right, one meeting at a time and every meeting over time, is the most potent way of driving data-driven culture in your organizations. First, similar to the Tesco example, if you have a big review coming up, you might have a lot of expectations of what data has got to tell you for that review. But the first question you have to ask yourself is, what have we done in the last 1 month, 1 quarter, 6 months to put in the right level of investments and support to get us the answers that we're expecting to get from the data? Second is, you got to listen to the team. If you've invested a lot in data, the team has got to tell you that, yes, we have access to all the data that we need to solve problems. And if that answer is, yeah, we're getting there or we're not quite there, then the investments are not yet bearing fruits. And we got to go back to step 1 to evaluate the investments and take corrective actions. Third is about accessibility. Accessibility is not a one-size-fits-all in any organization. Just because your analytics team is able to access data, it doesn't make your data truly accessible. For, you have to understand that a lot of people who need data are not technically adept. business analysts, executive leaders, operators in your organizations. They're not data savvy, they're not technology savvy, but they still need to access data, which means if you have a lot of data, it's good for you to expose it as is in a raw format to your technical team and analytics team, but you also have to focus on building the right translation layers and interpretation layers for rest of the organization which is hungry for data. And both put together is true accessibility. Fourth is talent. You made investments, data is available, data is accessible um, easily. Fourth is the teams that are looking at data, are they critically able to analyze data to get to important insights and answers? Many times we confuse talent in data and analytics as people who are very technically adept or academically qualified on data or statistics. In many cases, I have not seen them to be completely perfect fits. Uh, so what you have to do or build is a team of problem solvers who are able to appreciate problems, who are able to appreciate the business priorities, are able to combine data with tools and techniques and visualization to solve problems and not just be great at the technology of data. Fifth, the golden term of culture. So this is really something that you and I will have to do consistently over a period of time. And every meeting that you have an opportunity to go and sit in, the question should be, what am I doing in this meeting better than the last meeting in terms of setting clear expectations of data, asking more questions of data, and ensuring that I'm showing the intent that we don't just think what is happening, but we know what is happening in that meeting, and which is really the essence of what data has got to bring to that meeting. And you got to demonstrate it every meeting you go to, or every review you go to, or every forum you go to. And this snowballs into a real culture of data-driven thinking in your organization. Sixth and seventh, you didn't see this in the previous example because we haven't gotten there yet. Sixth and seventh are really step changes. Sixth is about building cross-functional problem solving through data. If you observe even the most mature organizations in data and analytics still have data organized in functional silos. There is finance data, there is product data, there's customer data, there is operations data, there's supply chain data. But what it prevents is the ability to look at the problem of, let's say, a declining growth across all these functions through one strand. And this is a historical error in the way we have structured data and we have thought about data. But to change it requires a Herculean effort, and that will only happen when we have done a lot of important work and we have delivered wins by navigating through step 1 to 5 again and again. And that's when we can ask for an organizational support and alignment to break that cross-functional, the functional silos into building the cross-functional layers of problem solving. Seventh is about trust. Now, I think we take this for granted in quite a few places because we have invested a lot, because we have data available, because there are a lot of reports. We assume that the organization and specifically the leadership trusts data-driven thinking and decision making. Personally, I have not seen a clear correlation between investments and action around data to real trust from leadership. I feel this takes multiple rounds of doing 1 to 6 or at least 1 to 5 again and again to show that data really can give us an edge. Data can really give us a competitive position in our markets. And this takes a lot of time, and it takes multiple cycles of doing 1 to 6 again and again before we can truly say that the organization trusts data and we are a data thinking and data based organization. We've come to the end of the talk almost. I understand this is a post-lunch session, and through the day you would have heard a lot, and there's a lot that you have to retain. So as an empathetic gesture, if you have to just take 3 things away from this talk, these are the 3 that I would suggest. First is, we have been talking about data-driven organizations for the last decade plus. But the very first thing that we saw is that there's a lot of work to do. Not many companies are still data-driven. which might include a lot of our organizations. So the focus should not die down. In fact, the focus should accelerate in building more vigor into making our organizations data driven. Point one. Second is we took some inspiration from Formula One. It really is an example of what a, a real data driven organization in its spirit could exhibit as a competitive edge. Third is a fundamental belief that I have, and I have put that to practice and I've seen results, and hence I'm sharing it with you. Real data-driven organizations are bottlenecked by culture, and if you have to really bring the data-driven culture and thinking, we got to build it one meeting at a time. And what I shared with you as a 7-step litmus test framework in the previous slide is one friendly suggestion on how you could build that in your organization. So with that, I will close my talk. It has been a pleasure presenting to you today, and looking forward to some interesting interaction through the question and answers. Thank you so much.